most of my patients, if they eat an apple, their insulin will be high for the next 2 days. Insulin dictates where fat goes. And to control it, you don't go check your insulin. But what you can do is to check the two molecules that it is very closely, tightly linked to. And you can do that at home.
Dr. Boz is a world-renowned expert. She'll teach you how to reverse insulin resistance in days with one food.
This man is 65 years old. He comes in and he said, I fasted for 21 days. His ketones after 21 days, 0.7. And the blood sugar was still triple digits. That's failing. That is a failed metabolism. We're gonna have you do sardines. And so here he is, it gets to the end of the sardine challenge, and by God, his numbers look great. And he's like, I'm never eating anything again except sardines.
There's someone watching right now. What should they do in their shin to know that they have elevated insulin?
Take your thumb and look at it. You've got a thumbnail, and it should hurt a little. So
Iodine, what do you think?
this is a nutrient that you have to survive.
If you're watching this, you're likely struggling with one or more of the following challenges: stubborn weight gain, diabetes, depression, or even an autoimmune condition. And most doctors will simply tell you, eat less or load up on superfoods to fix your issue. But my guest today, Dr. Annette Bosworth, will prove why that's wrong. It's not about calories, it's about insulin resistance. In this episode, Dr. Boz draws on her 25 years of clinical experience. She'll share how you can spot insulin resistance without expensive labs, including a simple test involving your toes. We're also going to discuss the butter trick and the sardine trick to literally stop insulin resistance and the surprising supplements that actually spike your insulin. And I was taking one of them. And if you're like me and you want to take control of your health when doctors can't, a very easy step is to hit the subscribe button, because next week I'm sitting down with Dr. Mindy Pelt to discuss how fasting can help you burn dangerous visceral fat faster than Ozempic. So Dr. Boz, my first question: if somebody's just watching this, they look down, they have belly fat, they feel fatigued, they can't sleep properly, why do you think they should first focus on their insulin?
It is the hidden layer. I mean, it is such a panacea for growing chronic medical problems. And it starts in their 20s when they didn't have screaming problems like, joint pain or brain fog or big fat tummy. They had this little bitty whisper that wasn't great. And they blew it off because they're 20. Who thinks about chronic problems when you're 20? And if I could synthesize their story back to the, people say, take the medical problem back to its roots, find the original story or original problem. And I tell patients that show up at 50 years old saying, I can't lose this weight, I can't get this off, it must be a hormonal problem. I'm like, yep. And it started when you were 22. I mean, that's where you can start measuring. It's 22. And they're like, I was fine at 22. When you look at the chronic nature of insulin, and I mean excessive insulin, you have to have it to live. But it's the excessive production of it for the last 50 years based on how we live and how we eat that says it's your enemy. Too much of it is your enemy. And to control it, you don't go check your insulin. You would never be able to check it often enough to really help the patient understand the problem. But what you can do are to check the two molecules that it is very closely, tightly linked to: your glucose and your ketones. And you can do that at home.
Very, very easy. I think people would love to test their fasting insulin, but as we know, doctors don't like to test it so easily. So if we can test our ketones and our blood glucose, also known as the Doctor Boz Ratio, which we'll talk about, that is going to help people spot their high insulin and fix it. I want to talk about the worst food that somebody is eating right now, today, because you see so many patients, they're probably eating some foods that you're like, why are you eating that? What is stopping their results and driving belly fat?
So let's profile them. We got a 40-year-old, they've been overweight for at least 10 years, and they might have had some early success weight loss because they changed their diet from something to something, but now they're flatlined. If I look at that patient, the most common thing, and again, this is not a follower of my channel because they would know better, it's powderized food. So the food that comes in powder form. Now, if you reconstitute it into the shape of a Cheeto or something processed food, then everybody's like, of course that's bad for you. But when you say, but it's powderized protein or it's powderized fat, and I tell them there are people who are healthy enough to eat that and not get the consequences, but most of the people who come into my world, that powdered, that pulverized protein is super tiny, so tiny you could never chew protein to that small of a level, or that pulverized fat even. It leads to excessive production of insulin because you powderized it, because it's such a fine particle number or particle size. That's a mistake where they're like, I thought that was healthy. I thought that was healthy. And I'm like, it used to be, but you've been at this too long and your insulin is it's trigger happy. You produce it when you shouldn't. And so the number one, I thought I was being healthy and she said to stop that, it's powderized protein. Yeah.
So if somebody's trying to increase their ketones and also trying to get healthy, we should not be having protein powder or a beef isolate protein, like one that's pure organic. There's like one ingredient. I know the ingredients, Dr. Boz. Is that not correct?
I wouldn't let them do that. I mean, there are people who get healthy enough that they can return to that. But here's what I would ask you to do. So just do an experiment on yourself. So have your powderized protein and then get up first thing, and I want you to TOT, test on the toilet. Test what your morning fasting glucose is, your morning fasting ketones. First thing, don't fuss around and make the coffee and walk the dog, or just test on the toilet. Prick that finger and see the numbers. What that number teaches me is what was your metabolism doing when you were sleeping? Now, you can't actually measure that, but you get the closest approximation when you look at those morning fasting numbers. And don't just do one day, because sometimes you don't sleep well or there's other reasons numbers don't look perfectly. Give me like 4 days of eating that powderized protein, say nothing else after lunch except your powderized protein. And then wake up the next morning and see what your numbers are. And if you are healthy enough, if you are not super insulin resistant, then your blood sugar is going to be in the 75 to 80 range, and your ketones are going to be like 0.8 to 1.8. I mean, they're in that range of really good churn of fat metabolism was happening while you sleep, and your blood glucose really got down to the nadir of healthy. And that will still be there on the toilet. We'll see it. What I see is if we say, all right, now give me another size of really good protein, really good fat, we're going to have you do sardines. Sardines turn out to be this really great protein that you don't pulverize. You chew it. Your mouth does the mastication of mushing up the food, but the size of the particle is much larger than when you find in industry. I mean, if you want to see a protein powder that clumps, guess how much that sells? Not. So you get the value in our society by having these smooth textures, and of course they'll add a little extra taste. Maybe if they don't, but you've got one ingredient, they probably didn't add anything extra. But the size of that protein from you chewing is way less number of particles stimulating the production of insulin. And now you have a different equation. Now look at your morning fasting glucose, morning fasting ketones. And if you are healthy enough, the numbers are going to be the same. You're going to have morning ketones in that 8 to 1.8 range. You're going to have morning glucose in that 75 to 80 range. And that's not what you usually see.
Okay, so we spoke about the worst food, which is protein powder. So it's not sugar, it's probably like protein powder. Because people probably watching this, they already know, okay, I shouldn't eat sugar, I shouldn't have grains, but they're probably doing the protein powder. So when it comes to people wanting to lower their insulin, this leads to your amazing patient story. What do you think is most important? Boosting the ketones and doing high fat, eating more butter? Or do you think doing an aggressive 21-day water fast is going to lower insulin and burn belly fat?
Right. I think most of the patients who come to my clinic or my channel, they don't have the mitochondria that are healthy enough to fast. All the time. I don't know if it's fortunate or unfortunate, but I think if you type in sardine, you will see my name next to it. When you look at people who write in and say, I did a water fast and I got these numbers. But then I did a sardine fast and I got these amazing numbers. And they'll say, well, which one should I do? I'm like, follow the numbers, especially those morning fasting ones. When I look at patients who come in and they test my protocol, and protocol wasn't built because I made it up. I watched enough patients say, okay, they're failing. And as I said before we started, there's this great story where I have a bunch of great stories. My year of 2026 is to try and tell really deep science-based stories of the patients I've seen. And this was my first article of the year. I've been on stage once to tell this man's story and it is super attracting because it's so counterintuitive. The people that I told it to about a month ago were clinicians and scientists, and the jaw-dropping results were it blows your mind to think, can that be true? So this man is 65 years old and he is a day trader. He comes in and he said, I fasted for 21 days. 21 days water only fast. And the blood sugar was still triple digits, 107. And at the end of that 21 days, anybody who's in a healthier, pretty healthy state should have ketones of 2, 3, 4, 5. I mean, they should be really fat, moving fat so quickly. His ketones after 21 days of nothing burger, salt and water, that's all he had, 0.7. That's failing. That is a failed metabolism, and the harder you push, the worse your body does. And he ruined so many things in those 21 days. His cells completely crumbled. In fact, the intracellular organelles of his mitochondria just died. And now he has a whole, generation of them missing from the formula of how do we get him healthy again. The story begins on this man where he is a pretty good, disciplined engineer, and he's early 50s. And his doctor said, you've got diabetes. And he has an A1C of 6.5 to prove it. The doctor said, here's the medicines, here's what you do. And the guy said, not doing this. He goes home, he gets on the internet, he finds my colleague, Dr. Fung, and Dr. Fung says, if you want to stay out of my dialysis center, if you want your kidneys to not die, fast for extended periods of time. So this man starts fasting, and somewhere online or in a book somewhere, he said, if the calendar said the first of the month, the second of the month, the third of the month, all the way up to the 7th day of the month, I will only have water and salt. When the calendar says 8, then I can go back to eating. And so he does this the first time and his blood sugars go down and he feels great. He's got this euphoric sense of what happens when you fast. But as soon as he went back to that other, normal eating, his blood sugars were back up to 140 on average. So he does it again and he does it again. And 18 months later, the man lost the weight that he was looking for, and he took that hemoglobin A1C down from 6.5, which is diabetic, to 5.5, which is clearly not diabetic anymore, not even pre-diabetic. In that setting, he was winning. Everything was looking good. He felt good. He's like, I showed you, doctor. And then he fell off a building and broke both legs. So he had a setback. Yeah, that's called a setback, but that's a massive setback because he was an active guy and he had mobility and he had the mental discipline and energy to do something like a water fast. But 2 broken legs, and now you're not only in a hospital to get them repaired, but you get into an institution afterwards because you can't, go to the toilet yourself. So he's immobile for 8 months and surrounded by the best in class medicine, people that don't fast, for heaven's sakes. You can't do that. You're repairing a bone. You need to eat the processed food that's on the menu at this, rehab center for other people with injuries. And by golly, he gets to the end of that at least I think it took him a year to get right back up to 6.5. So he's surrounded by all the doctors and he says, oh my gosh, my diabetes is back. What's the best medicine that you have for me, doctor? And he goes, well, indeed, I have a brand new drug recently on the market called tirzepatide, which is one of the GLP-1 GIP agonists. Great drug when used correctly. And here's this man who's just barely back walking again, and they start him out on a tiny dose, and a few weeks go by, and it doesn't seem to be doing anything, so they dial it up a little bit, and they dial it up and dial it up and dial it up, and they get him on the maximum dose, 15 milligrams, injected into his tummy, his belly fat, every week for 2 years. And during that time, no weight loss, and his hemoglobin A1C ends up to be 10.9. Yeah, that's a blood sugar north of 220. So not only does he have diabetes, he has rip-roaring diabetes, and he is really disappointed in medicine. He went into that doctor thinking things were going to be better, knowing he hadn't lost any weight, but the drug should have taken care of the labs at least, right? So he's on the way home from the doctor, super disappointed, and he throws the pen out the window saying, it cost me, like $1,300 a month, even with his insurance, and it's not doing anything. I'm going to go back to what worked. But by now, he's a little older. He is 65, and that's where it's 2025. Oh yeah, it was last spring. What am I thinking? And he says, okay, I'm going to do that thing that all you told me not to do, but I'm back to being in control of my health care, and I'm going to fast. And he gets to the end of 72 hours, and his blood sugars are still north of 200. And so he says, well, I'll just do it a little longer. So he gets to 7 days, and then blood sugars are still too high, and they're still too high. And he gets to 21 days before the blood sugar is 107, which is not great for 21 days, but it's way better than what he was doing before he ate. And what happened to him was he felt terrible. When I see people who have healthy metabolisms, whose mitochondria are being activated and they're really, igniting autophagy, which is the cleanup of the debris, but mitophagy is the mitochondria who is maybe, I describe them as crippled. They just can't perform under the stress. And if you've got this nice, strong, disciplined engineer who just pushes harder and says, I did this before, it's going to work, and he just keeps fasting, his body isn't ready for that. And he was failing so badly that if I had to imagine how many mitochondria did he lose in 21 days of fasting, and you can see it in the numbers, they aren't getting fat oxidized, they aren't moving that other fuel through the cells, they're just, mobilizing blood sugar, and he feels awful. So here he is saying, okay, I'm doomed. This is how the rest of my life is going to go. There is no hope. I've done everything possible, the highest medication, the best in class for 2 years. That didn't do it. I fasted for, just shy of a month, and that didn't do it either. And when he came into our class, again, we do a 3-week class of the protocol that I would use if you're a seizure patient, if you're a cancer patient, meaning we don't have a lot of time to fuss around. I need your attention. If you want to see how to do this, here's the steps. We only have a few students in the class because I want special attention paid to them. And this guy came in pretty grumpy. He didn't like that the cost of the class was more than he wanted to pay. And he was like, is this going to work? And he's, typical engineer saying, prove it, prove it, prove it. And the first week he's like, why aren't I making better ketones? Why aren't I making better ketones? And his ketones were like 0.8, which was way better than he got in the first 21 day. But what's he doing in that first week? He got a 80% fat diet. And he thinks, this can't be working. This has to be wrong. So his mind is not as in this. He's grumpy. He's definitely grumpy. And he's disappointed is what's really happening. He wants the rest of his life to have vitality, to be alive. He's super smart. Why can't he math his way out of this problem? And I get it. So I kept, the students are divided into groups of 10, and I kept telling this coach, just have lots of grace for him. He is definitely grumpy. And I don't really know him well enough. He's just one of the few engineers that says, my blood sugar is still 200, my blood sugar is still 170, and why isn't it better? I'm 6 days into your class, and why did I'm like, calm down. We're trying to make some mitochondria here. Give it a little minute. And so then at the end of the first week, after they've had 20 total carbohydrates or less, that's the only thing I want them counting. And I really want them fat forward. They have to be eating high fat. And then we said, all right, mister, all you get on the menu for the next 3 days is sardines. At the end of the sardine challenge, we have blood sugars in the 140s, and we have ketones at like 1.8. So, looking at that Dr. Boz ratio, meaning I've really lowered his insulin. That insulin reduction, which you think, well, isn't that what you lowered when he wasn't eating anything? I'm like, no, you didn't. There was such a stress response going on in those patients that the body's like literally sending off an alarm bell saying, we're not eating now, I don't have access to the fat, there's this problem, and between the cortisol and that just chronic illness, they are not healthy enough for fasting. And so here he is, it gets to the end of the sardine challenge, and by God, his numbers look great. He's like, I'm never eating anything again except sardines. I'm like, no, go back to your menu, and then we'll get you through this next week. And now we're going to do a water fast. And he's like, water fast? I just did that for 21 days. That doesn't work for me. I'm like, trust the process. Trust the process. You weren't making ketones when you did that last water fast. And you don't have to, you don't have to do the full 72-hour fast. It's like, that's the ultimate challenge in that class. 36 hours you can do. And you just tell me how you feel at 36 hours and then we'll go from there. And at 36 hours, he's like, I actually feel pretty damn good. And you can tell in his numbers, because now his ketones are like 2.5 and his blood sugar is like under 100 for the first time. Oh no, it wasn't under 100. It's under 120, which is, getting into that. At least he's now pre-diabetic instead of diabetic. And by the end of he did make it 72 hours of water fasting. He did not think he was going to do that at the beginning. And now his ketones are north of 4, and his blood sugar, I think the lowest it got was in that 115 range. I mean, to take such a severely ill patient in, September 1st is essentially when we met him. And by January 1st, to have not only all of those medical problems reversed, but to have them, in the evidence of one of the most crippled parts of his body, the place distal to the breaks in his leg, which the heart's going to have to help with, the lymph's going to have to help with, your metabolism. But his shin print, I can see his shin bone. Now that is bragging rights. That's incredible for this patient.
Now, as we've discussed so far, insulin resistance is at the root cause of most of your chronic health issues. And the very first step to fix it is to significantly reduce your carbohydrates, sometimes to under 20 grams a day. But as you do this, your body goes through a major transition, and you might experience some side effects like headaches, nausea, fatigue, and even cramping. And this is where salt is so important. Now, I want you to be very generous with your salt in every meal and in your water. But if you still feel these side effects, you really need a precise balance of electrolytes, including sodium, potassium, and magnesium. And that's why I'm so proud to have Element as a sponsor of this episode. I personally use Element because it has a science-backed ratio with no nasties and no preservatives. And I use the raw unflavored pack. It's a teal color, and I add it to my coffee and my water during the day. And especially I add it after a heavy workout. And if you prefer flavors, they have plenty of great ones to choose from. And right now, Element is offering my viewers a free sample pack on every order. So you'll get 8 single servings of their most popular flavors to try for free. So if you want this, just head to drinkelement.com/The Primal Podcast. How much weight did this patient lose? Because we spoke about the HbA1c, we spoke about other outcomes, but he wanted to lose weight and he was on a little GLP-1. How much weight did he lose?
Yeah, so he started that 21-day fast at 260 pounds. And again, he lost some weight, but then as soon as he stopped the fast, it came back on. So he came into our class at 251 pounds, so a few pounds down. He'd been following the channel on YouTube and doing a few little things. By the time he got to September, he was 230 pounds. So now you've lost 20 pounds during that 21-day fast. And people say, it's just water weight. Absolutely, it was water weight. His legs were filled with it. So we're down about 20 pounds in September. In October, he gets down to 224. And then for some reason or another, he doesn't weigh himself in November or December. He said, I want to weigh myself January 1st. Take a guess what his weight was if he was 224 in October.
180.
So close. 190. He got under the two.
Well, in the still pretty awesome.
Yes.
Can I just tell you, this is a major teaching point, and I know that you love teaching, Dr. Boz. For somebody watching, and they've heard this whole story right now, and it's a major point even in your history, seeing so many patients. Why is this important for the person watching to understand about insulin?
The difficult part, you said earlier, doctors don't like to check insulin. It's because it's not just a one point in time insulin. And I think, when we have point of care glucose or the continuous glucose monitors that we use to teach patients, and they start to see the volatility in glucose. Take that times 10 when you're looking at the volatility in insulin. So they come in fasting and, if their doctor, they put on their best dress and their best outfits for the doctor to see them, and they do their best to make their blood work look good. Okay, I'm going to really fast. I usually don't fast. I usually have a nibble before I go to bed or this or that. But I'm getting blood tests done tomorrow, so that they're perfect. And they wake up and their insulin isn't bad. because they haven't stimulated it. When we look at the hidden messages behind insulin, is that 20-year-old eating processed food, just living in America 101, drive through, not even bad food, just not great food. It's in abundance, it's late at night, it's coupled without as much activity in our lives. They don't look unhealthy, but the insulin is doing its evil job of being in excess. And I mean, to me, I had a 24-year-old come in saying, I want somebody to prescribe me tirzepatide, and I see you do this. I am only 10 pounds overweight, and I've gone to every online person saying, tell me that I can have tirzepatide. I look like the lady in all of your marketing. I want to lose the last 10 pounds. And I've watched your channel. I want you to tell me, would you give it to me? I said, I'll write you the drug as long as you blog about it. And you have to do everything that I tell you. So she's 120 pounds. She's not overweight. But she does have, she's like, oh, I'm out of college and my jeans don't fit as tight and my brain's a little foggy and my energy seems, so she's telling me all these things that insulin is doing. And I look at her shin print and I'm like, it's not anything close to our other patient, but there's a little hint there. And I'm like, okay, here's the rules. You have to do exactly what I tell you to do. And I will write you the prescription for this. And she's like, yes, because I went online and I told the truth to 10 of these providers and they wouldn't provide it for me. They said I have an eating disorder and I want to try this drug. I'm like, okay. So I said, here's step number 1, you're going to have to go get your labs done. And I do all the labs I would do if you were a 40-year-old, which is what are your liver enzymes, what's your kidney function, what's your hemoglobin A1C, what are all the things. And then we're going to go get a body scan done. So she doesn't have diabetes. But she does have a little bit of protein coming out of her kidneys, a very bad sign of high insulin, and her liver enzymes are just slightly outside the range of normal. Now, Rita, this is a 24 healthy, glowing young woman who just is having a few of these little insulin side effects. My energy's low. I've put on a few pounds. I just feel a little and then there's these times where if oranges are in front of me, I'll just eat the whole thing. You're like, okay, I've done that.
What? Oh, God.
So there's a little bit of behavior in there that says she's craving for food, which is another classic sign for the insulin's higher than you think it is. And as soon as you lower the sugar, you'll overshoot, and then you want more, and you overshoot, and you want more, and you overshoot. And so they chase the buzz that happens with carbs like what you find in oranges today. So she gave me enough hints that I kind of knew where the cards were going to play. All right, so I said, you got to go on a ketogenic diet. You got to show me every morning, fasting glucose, fasting ketones. What are your numbers? And you got to be in ketosis before I will write the prescription for the drug. So she, gets prepared. She writes the first blog about how she's going to do these. She did these labs. She did her DEXA. The results aren't back yet, but now she's going keto. She goes keto, and despite me saying salt, 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 she gets the keto flu. Now, in my mind, that's another sign that insulin's been higher than you think it is. And I've just slammed it down. Okay, insulin, it does these sneaky little things, right? And when they've had them for 25 years, slamming it down in my 50-year-old who's on three blood pressure medicines, okay, we can have problems. But this is a 24-year-old. Her blood pressure's fine. But as soon as you take away the carbohydrates and you have her on a high-fat, high-fat, medium protein diet, it takes her like 2 days to make a good ketones, and now she's got them, and then she has the keto flu, which tells me you just diuresed, you just wrung out the tiny little insulin-driven inflammation that our other patient had so high you could see it from across the room. So I know I'm winning. So then she gets the prescription for the drug, and before she ever injects the first one, she's like, gosh, I just can't believe how I don't crave any food. I just can't believe how much better I'm sleeping. I've lost a couple of pounds. And I'm like, really? Now you have that $400 drug in your hand. You sure you want to do it? Oh, of course. I'm like, okay. So then she gets the first injection in. And like most young women, if you've had chronically elevated insulin, and you go on a ketogenic diet, and now tirzepatide, again, I started on 0.3, like half the dose that I started this other guy on. So such a tiny dose, you can't spit it. I mean, it's like one teardrop of drug. And she said, within a day, I was having my period. And I'm like, that's another thing that insulin does. Okay, when you lower it, you are going to see your fat-based hormones, estrogen, testosterone, progesterone, do things that they have been trapped under the veil of what insulin dictates where fat goes. Those fat-based hormones have been under that dictatorship. And then she has this spotty bleeding when she thinks, she gets online and says, it must be the drug. I gave the drug and I've been bleeding for 3 weeks. And I'll let you, if you go to our Substack, you'll get to hear how her story turns out. But Rena, I said yes to this young woman because this is the craze that you see in America. Like, if you're 50 and older, 1 of 4 of them have been on a GLP-1. That's crazy. If you take the whole adult population, it's 1 in 8. And when you go online to the mills of GLP-1 and they just start you way out at too high of a dose and you get all the side effects, but you don't change the types of food you're eating, the timing that you're eating, you aren't decreasing the insulin. You already got the insulin monster going, and it only takes that highly particleized food, that processed food that, sure, you eat less of it when you're on these GLP-1s, but it's a profound difference when you say, eat the whole foods, eat the high fat and the protein, give me that in a ketogenic state. And then, watch how naturally this young woman is going to make GLP-1, even if she, decides to go forward with the experiment. You're like, that's what insulin does.
That's fascinating. And I was just thinking that every single person wants to go on a GLP-1, but if they just change what they eat, yes, the switch happens. So you highlighted 2 patient stories there. One older gentleman, very, very challenging, and then a younger female that might look like me. I'm not that young. I'm 42. However, it's a teaching point to understand that insulin does not just affect older people. It's anyone starting from the age of 20. Now, in your conversation, you mentioned some weird signs that people could know that they have elevated insulin. Periods, the thumb on the shin. I press my shin. It's like really nice and tight, but people can do that. Can you explain? So someone watching right now, because they're just like holding their phone, watching you and listening to you, what should they do in their shin to know that they have elevated insulin?
Right. So there's a couple things that I tell people to do. Take your thumb and look at it. You've got a thumbnail. Okay. Your thumbnail looks a little pink. And if you take that thumbnail and you push it on your knuckle, it should turn white when you push hard enough. So the pressure that you're going to use has to turn the thumbnail white. Okay. So that's how hard you push. And then you want to push along the bone of the shin. So people, not in the muscle, along the shin bone. And when people have swelling, that bone might be a little harder to pinpoint. But the key is there are sheets of fascia. Think of them as like saran wrap, under the skin. There is no fat. Okay, this is not fat that you're pushing against. This is fluid in the space that it doesn't belong. And there's multiple reasons that it ends up there, but when you can push on that enough to turn your thumbnail bed white and you hold it for 30 seconds, and it should hurt a little. So you're doing it right if you do that.
Mine wasn't hurting. Okay.
Yeah.
30 seconds, it should hurt.
Yeah. And then when you lift it up, okay, close your eyes and just see if you can feel the shin print. When I have medical students, when I teach medical students how to do this, you can grade it. But when I teach patients to do it, I say, just close your eyes. Can you feel the dimple? And then you can have other ways you say, oh, how long did it take for the dimple to go away? 30 seconds, a minute. In our day trader, it took him, it took like 10 minutes and you could still see where the print was. So the time that it takes for the fluid to go away, it should never have an imprint, first of all. But when you're trying to measure, am I getting better? Look at it at 30 seconds after you've lifted it and say, is it gone? When you first lift it up, it should have nothing. But if it has something, tell me what it is at 30 seconds. Can you feel it at 30 seconds? Can you feel it at a minute? And so that's just a way to measure, am I getting better? Like, is the blood pressure getting better? You can use numbers there. When you're looking at shin print, you're looking for, did the indentation return to non-palpable? You couldn't feel it when your eyes were closed. Within 30 seconds, within a minute.
Got it. So people can do that at home. So if you're looking at a patient, basically I want people to look in the mirror and know, like, I have high insulin, I need to do something about it. What should they look at on their face, their armpits, their elbow to see that they have high insulin?
Well, the skin things are great because it is, you can look at across the room. The show House, the doctor who's snarky, but he's kind of like, Detective Holmes I love that show. And he would look across the room and say all the diagnoses that he could see on a patient. It was a game he played. So you can do that. You can see that the skin, in the folds of the skin, it turns more brown, more dark. And so if you already have brown skin, it gets a little browner. In fact, sometimes you look at the back of the neck and say, you just need to wash that off, but it doesn't wash off. The darkness in your armpits and in the folds of your groin all become darker. One of the places that on a physical exam that we would methodically document is under the folds of a woman's breast. Again, there's no sun coming there. It shouldn't be brown. And when that fold lays on another layer of skin, so the breast touches the chest cavity or the chest wall, you'll also have some abrasion that causes the skin tags to happen. Again, those are not normal. Those are a direct consequence of having high insulin, but what comes before the skin tags can be this little bitty just dusting of brown. So I'm butt white, and so mine would be just a tiny little darkness in a place where there's no sun. We're like, oh, that's just me being tan. No. This is on your armpits, under your breasts. The sun's not getting there. So that's one thing across the room. But one of the earliest signs is they'll have higher blood pressure than they are supposed to. That's like an easy thing across the globe. You can get your blood pressure taken. And insulin resistance, what's one of the first signs is that blood pressure is higher than it should be. Today, all the guidelines would tell you we want that top number to be in the 1-teens. We want the bottom number to be in the 70s. Low 70s would be great. Don't get anywhere near 80. And when you're young and healthy, that is not going to be normal. It's going to be normal it's not going to be abnormal for like a decade. But just like this 24-year-old did not know her insulin was high, if she came into me, first baby, 32, in about a decade, and she got that high blood pressure during pregnancy, my first thought would be, oh, she's had high insulin for a decade.
For a decade?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. So if someone can't lose weight, they can't get pregnant, they have some sort of symptoms that they come to you for, it can be 10 years in the making that they have high insulin.
Absolutely. Which is, the best part about that is, you're going to, one of the ways to test on your own, right? Let's say I have some friends, I live in Florida now, right? So I have all these neighbors that have relatives in Cuba. And of course the lights are out and the electricity is like, how do you know if they're healthy? I'm like, well, looking at their blood pressure is okay, but maybe they don't know how to take blood pressure. I'm like, well, put them on a ketogenic diet and just give me 3 days. Okay, give me 5 days when you're in Cuba because you need to have salt, but give me 5 days on a ketogenic diet. Do you feel better? So what was trapping that brain from the energy, from the fat being the fuel to those brain cells, to the fuel to your heart cells? We deliver on that within that third, fourth, fifth day for most people. Now, our patient at the beginning of this conversation, he was so sick. I was happy to hear he felt good like by the 6th week of knowing him. But most people, and they get in a ketogenic state, and within 3 days, they're like, hot damn, do I feel good? That's the best way to say, was I insulin resistant? Yes, you were insulin resistant. That's what that looks like. And there's so many people in our community that we don't have to keep, the whole population is insulin resistant. From my point of view, it's like everywhere you look, you have to work so hard to not be insulin resistant. That's just normal. Everybody feels better on the keto diet for the first 3 days. I'm like, yep, because their insulin was high before they started.
So why don't we talk now about how to start a ketogenic diet the right way, according to Dr. Boz. You talk about 95% of people do keto wrong, high fat wrong. What is the number one mistake that they're doing?
Number one mistake when they do keto is I call it ass over apricot. They go all in, tumble down, go all the way to the most extreme. They get on my YouTube channel, they hear that I fast 72 hours a week, and they're just like, that's what I'm gonna do. And I'm like, stop that. You gotta pick up the cells along the way and train them how to know what to do with a ketone and know how to make a ketone. And so the book I wrote is called Keto Continuum, because you don't have to do all the steps in the continuum if you're healthy enough, but you definitely need to do the first few steps to be able to activate that chemistry set inside your own body. I mean, what did our patient at the beginning of this story do wrong? He did ass over apricot. He just said, I am going to fast for 21 days. And you're like, okay, that did not help. You made it worse. What he should have done is step into a state of ketosis. And like I said earlier, I have patients who say, if the only thing you can do is sip on BHB for the next week, then do it. Keep eating your pasta and drinking your wine. But right now, you can get at least the heart using ketones, the brain using ketones. When those vital organs are using ketones, your liver will make its own ketones, even when you're eating carbs. Now, it quickly shuts off when you stop drinking the BHB, but you can ignite the chemistry set. And then, of course, what happens is they can't believe how much better they feel. And for the first time, they're willing to say, you mean I shouldn't buy cereal? I'm like, no, you should not buy cereal.
Even keto cereal, Dr. Boz?
Yeah.
No? Damn. Now, as we've discussed so far, achieving your true health is more than just what you eat. It is also what you absorb. We often focus on food, but we forget the environmental toxins that can destroy your gut function and disrupt your hormones every single day. Now, these include everyday products like toothpaste, body wash, and even your shampoo. And most conventional brands are loaded with ingredients like parabens, phthalates, and even fluoride, chemicals that soak through your skin and your gums and interfere with your insulin levels and your metabolic health, even when you're doing every single thing right. And that's why we crafted the Primal Tallow Balms and soaps and our new shampoo bars. Everything that we make is 100% chemical free, and it's crafted from grass-fed tallow, which is naturally packed with vitamins A, D, E, and K2. The great thing is, there is no nasties, there is no preservatives, there's no fake stuff. There's just stuff that your body actually recognizes. And I've been using the unscented soap every single day. It's incredibly gentle and doesn't strip your skin's natural barrier. And if you're in the US, great news, our new USA store is now open, which means faster shipping and cheaper prices. And for the next 7 days, get up to 30% off our new shampoo bars and body wash. Just head to theprimal.com/shampoo or use code shampoo at checkout. I've also linked them in the description. So basically what you're saying is don't rush into it, do it step by step. Can we talk about I've got 3 or 4 steps here so that people can just generally go into this in a nice, smooth way and not have the, crash that people get. So the first thing is to track insulin, not calories. Don't count calories. Why?
If you lead with prick your finger in the morning, usually I lose my audience. So as much as I love the data that I show on my channel and I use for my patients, if I'm in the wild and saying what's the first step, it's not prick your finger, but it is by urine ketone strips. And what you're going to look at is I want you to be able to check your urine ketones, tinkle on this little strip every morning and tell me if you're in ketosis. But the first week, I just want you I don't want you to change anything about what you do. I want you to get the Chronometer app. I still think that's the best one for measuring accuracy in carbohydrate counting. That's the one we teach. And it's free. So just get on there and figure it out. And you do not want to have, you want to look at how many carbohydrates you start with. And if I'm being nice, I tell them to cut by 50 until you get to 20 total carbohydrates per day. Now, I like ripping the Band-Aid off a little faster than that because I think changing behavior takes focus and concentration. So just like if I was helping an alcoholic stop drinking, when the judge sends him to me, he's focused and concentrated. So we can change some behaviors. When people are, tickling their brain with, could I do a ketogenic diet? I get them swallowing the ketones if they're willing. But if the steps, what are the first 3 steps is check your number of carbohydrates before you ever begin, because most people do not appreciate how many carbohydrates. They say, oh, 20 carbs per day, I can do that. And like, an apple has 18.
Can I just tell you, I literally just spoke to Dr. Georgia Eid yesterday, and then I was talking about fruit and foods to eat and not to eat. And I was asking about apple, and then she said, well, it depends. As you would say, if somebody's metabolically flexible. I said, but Dr. Eid, it's got 20 grams of carbs in one apple. And Dr. Boz, you're saying to eat 20 grams a day. But one apple has, so I think people can calculate, wow, I probably shouldn't be eating an apple if I want to lose weight and drop my insulin.
Right. I mean, you might be healthy enough for that. So you could test yourself. If you wake up in the morning and your glucose is in the 70s and your ketones are above around 1, then the apple did not stimulate that much insulin in you. But most of my patients, if they eat an apple, especially if they eat it after 2 o'clock in the afternoon, their insulin will be high for the next 2 days. I mean, it is impressive how broken their insulin producing system is. It's just revved. So they can't afford to tickle it when we're first starting. You just 20 total carbohydrates per day. If you're looking for success, it's not net, it is absolutely start there. And people can relax it in their future healthier state. That doesn't mean in a week you can start eating eating an apple. You've been making too much insulin for a decade, probably a decade. So I need the little cells in your pancreas to be in low insulin production mode for like 90 straight days. That means you cannot have an ice cream binge in the middle. The timer starts over. Those little cells are going to replace to the maximum number of insulin that they had to produce in their lifespan. So let's say the cell lasts for 6 weeks. It's going to still take a memory. Okay, it's time for me to die. I'm going to make 2 replicas of myself. What's the maximum amount of insulin that I had to make in the last 6 weeks? And it will replicate that copy of those little cells. So that's why it takes so much time and energy and discipline. I mean, discipline isn't my favorite word to use. A community of people saying, let me show you how to do this. Let me show you other things to do besides eat. Like you've got to create a life that's rich and it's attractive, that's filled with vitality, not just scold and shame them into the rules of a ketogenic diet.
That's why, Dr. Boz, what you do is so important, because your live classes, everything that you do, it's so important. Your YouTube channel, all your messages, which is so clear and simple, because it's not discipline, it's just community, being around like-minded people. And that's why we're going to Meat Stock as well, so that we can be around.
Yes, I'm so excited. It'll be the first time we meet in person, isn't it?
Yes.
I think it will.
So that was the first rule. So very, very simple. Track insulin, not calories, under 20 grams of carbs. Don't eat an apple. Next rule is don't eat after dark. Now, Jason Fung, I love him, but he does talk about that you can shift your eating. Earlier is better, but you can just do an intermittent fasting window. But why do you say try to shift it really early? Why is that better?
Yeah, naturally, as we age, our bodies become more insulin resistant at night, even healthy. Like I'm pretty healthy, but if I want to mess that up, give me 3 days of eating after 6 o'clock and watch how high my blood sugars are the next morning. I mean, it is not like, oh, in 6 weeks I'll increase. No, within days, my blood sugars in the morning will rise. Looking at any human that eating earlier in the day, eating during daylight, is going to be the rule I put out for patients just to make it simple. But I have some patients who are so stinking insulin resistant, and they've had it for so long that their last bite of food is by 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And by golly, their blood sugars in the morning are 75. They really are able to lose the weight to really improve. And people say, but I'm not hungry in the morning. I'm like, you will be on about day 3. If you do not eat after 1 o'clock, you might not get there the first day, but you will be by day 3. Just let your body adjust to that new rule.
Okay. Rule number 3, which is simple, the Dr. Boz ratio. So you mentioned it earlier. So can you kind of explain how people can do it right now?
Right. Yeah. So this rule came because I was helping my mother, who's a wonderful woman, but her brain was not doing well. She'd been on chemotherapy. She'd had some major life setbacks. And I'm trying to calculate how to get her ready for the next round of chemotherapy. She was in the hospital. She was really sick. And of course, the units of measurement in the way we measure glucose we do deciliters or milligrams per deciliter, not millimoles per liter. And so I needed you to convert this and do this and then get them into 1-to-1 ratio so that the millimoles of ketones were 1 and then the glucose was, okay. She looked at me like, you're nuts. I said, all right, Mom, let's just do dirty math. And you're going to take the big number in the American units and you're going to divide it by the little number. And that Dr. Boz ratio is just another mathematical way to do a GKI, which is a lot more math, and it's not difficult. It's just, you got to calculate it. When looking at that, both of those numbers, what they're measuring is what is the relative impact of insulin in that body right now? And let me unpack that, Rena. In somebody like our patient, when he was fasting for 21 days and had that high cortisol state, the impact of insulin was still very high in his body. If you reverse 10 years before that, when he first did the story of Dr. Fung, where he was fasting for 8 days straight and then eating and fasting for 8 days straight, his insulin on the first day of his fast was still very insulin resistant. By not eating for 8 days, he had lowered the impact of insulin. So even though the amount of insulin was less, it was the first month that got a little better. The second month it got a little better. The third month, by the 18th month, yes, he was lowering his blood sugar, but the overall impact of what insulin was doing inside the cell, which is really what we are trying to reverse in insulin-resistant patients, it isn't just, okay, lower their insulin. It's lower how sensitive the cell is to hearing the insulin. And that's what a Dr. Boz ratio is measuring. So that's what a GKI is measuring. So for instance, you take that gentleman and he was able to fast for 7 days and then he would eat and his insulin would go right back up. He would make a bunch of it. He was very insulin resistant. He could stop his body from making it by not eating for those 7 days when he was in his healthy phase, but he was still very insulin resistant. It took him 1.5 years for the cells to not be so to be so resistant to that amount of insulin. And the reverse happens when I have a patient who would come to see me in the early part of my career and I put them on insulin. And at first 10 units of long-acting insulin would work, but then it took 20 and then it took 30. And to ever undo that, I have to decrease. It wasn't that they needed 3 times the insulin because we did the math wrong. They needed 3 times the insulin because the cells became more and more and more resistant to the insulin. And if you were watching the Dr. Boz ratio during those times, their Dr. Boz ratio, the higher the ratio, the higher the insulin resistance. So, when I started them on 10 units of insulin, their ratio would have been, let's just say they're medium for insulin resistant. After being on 10 units for 6 months, now it's a little more insulin resistant. After being on insulin for 4 years, now we're very insulin resistant. So we're building the insulin resistance by giving them the drug, but you don't need me to do that. You just need to eat a bunch of carbs. So when I look at that Dr. Boz ratio and people come in and say, gosh, I came into your program and I did so good and I had these great Dr. Boz ratios and everything was, butterflies and unicorns. And then I did everything the same and the numbers my Dr. Boz ratio is terrible. I'm like, yes, you got healthier. Your insulin resistance is better. And now you need to give another stimulus to your metabolism. That's a fast, that's a sauna, that's a decrease the eating window. So what worked initially improved your insulin resistance for a little bit, and you'll see it in that decreased Dr. Boz ratio. But as your body gets used to the new rules, the Dr. Boz ratio goes up. Again, you're still insulin resistant. We can measure it. And it might only take 2 cups of insulin to do the damage now. And when you started, it took 2.5 cups of insulin. So we have less insulin. But it's how well do the cells hear the message from insulin? And they hear it better, but you still make a bunch of it. And that's where by looking at that Dr. Boz ratio, first thing in the morning, you're measuring how well does your body listen to insulin. And Rena, people have seasons. Like I have a couple patients who had a major eye surgery that they were counting down to, and they come into the program and they do all the things and they're doing pretty good. And they get to the eye surgery and they did great. And now they're on the other side of it. So the urgency is gone, and they say, oh, my Dr. Boz ratio has just not been the same since surgery. And I'm like, yeah, but maybe that's as good as you can do right now. In order for us to sweep that back into a really good reversing medical problem Dr. Boz ratio, you're going to need to put in some work. And right now you're healing from a very serious, eye surgery. Take it easy. You're stable, but the ladder to better is still ahead of you. So, people say, oh, you chase numbers. Yes, numbers are how you know what your body is doing. You don't have to have perfect numbers forever. I don't have perfect numbers every day either, but it is the numbers that tell me how far off have I gone.
Perfect. So if somebody wants to push up their Dr. Boz ratio, like maybe it's like stalling a bit, some tricks that we can do to kind of increase your metabolic rate. You like to sometimes tell your patients to eat butter only. No protein, no carbs, just eat butter. Are they going to have a heart attack? Why do you do that, Dr. Boz? Why do you say that?
Yeah, there's a one lesson I'm usually teaching them in that time, and it is the word satiety. Like, satiety is a hormone-based response of feeling full. That satiation, it is very primal. You know you're done. You cannot eat another bite. And especially in my people who I need to have so much protein. And I'm like, your numbers are not showing you're not reversing problems right now. You are in a very low ketogenic state. And although if you're healthy, you could stay there, you're not healthy. You're still 70 pounds overweight. Watch what happens when you eat just butter. And they're like, just like you, it's going to be a heart attack. I'm like, no, I'm looking for satiety and those hormones that cause your body and brain to say, I just can't eat anymore. They're all based on the consumption of fat, which is, cholecystokinin and, the peptide YY and CKK, all these hormones that say, yes, I'm done eating, I'm full. And they're fat based. And I have many patients who just not felt that. So eat butter all day. For the whole day, I want you to eat butter, maybe 2 days of it, because they're stubborn. I want you to rate, do you feel full? And to awaken, some of those people can't make these hormones. They just have been in such a high insulin state that they haven't felt that. So by eating butter for 2 days, you are able to wake up some of these fat-based responses. You swallow fat, and so now finally you're making cholecystokinin and all the things that do help you feel full that the high insulin state wouldn't let you do. So by the end of the butter experiment, I'm like, that's the feeling we're chasing. You know that you're in a proper chemistry set when you say, gosh, I got to the end of that steak or whatever they're eating, and I felt this sensation of not needing to eat anymore. And when I see some of the mistakes carnivores make, they'll say, eat until you're full, but they don't have the hormonal surge to feel full. 2 days of butter, that's what I'm chasing. That's what I want you to feel. And when they have no protein in the way, nothing else in the way, the butter and it's much easier to talk them into butter than sardines usually.
So I want to ask sardines, which is better, doing the butter fast, sardine fast, which is better?
If I'm teaching satiety, nothing beats butter. If you don't know what it feels like to feel full, if you are a carnivore that overeats, I can show you what it feels like to feel full with butter, and it's much easier to sell them on that. But if you're trying to live a life, I'm going to sell fish to you every day. Those little bitty fish have, all of the nutrient density. They are high fat content. I'm telling people, even if you buy them in water, put the oil on. You want them in oil. You want them with fat. And that high protein, you're not pulverizing that protein into little bitty particles. You're chewing it, and you've got enough fat in there to shut off the hunger. So sardines for the long game, butter for if I'm teaching what does it feel like to feel full.
Hey, I like that. The short game and the long game. What about a game to trick your brain into more focus? A quarter cup MCT oil. Does that work?
Oh, it does, but be careful, you can get diarrhea.
Oh,
so
okay.
meaning the cells that absorb MCT, meaning if you have pure C8, C10, meaning 8 carbons or 10 carbons is the fat chains I'm talking about, not C12. When it's 8 or 10 carbons or less, you absorb that fat, you do not digest it. But if you're a baby keto person and you haven't been practicing absorbing that fat, it'll come out the other end and you'll see it in the toilet. So a quarter cup of MCT is a lot. But my gosh, when you do put it in your system, it does turn into a really high ketogenic state. The part that I'm a big, repairing brains is what my ethos is for my medical practice. When I look at the people who have C8 to drive the production of ketones high, yes, you get really good ketone numbers with C8, but C10 crosses the blood-brain barrier and is a direct fuel into the astrocytes of the brain and is especially found for improving that cognitive function for anybody who's struggling from a concussion or chronic diseases of Parkinson's or Alzheimer's. So C8, C10 is still by far the best combination of fats for saying, can I get those in my circulation? And most importantly, can I get them to my brain?
So if you want to buy C8 or C10, is there certain brands? Like, is there something that you'd look for? Because I haven't seen C8 and C10 to buy.
I sell it.
Oh my God, Dr. Boz, that's awesome. What is I'll leave the link for your website in the show notes so that people can, because I mean, I do this for a living. I never heard of like the C8 and C10. Okay, so that is 3 tricks to boost ketones. And you mentioned to eat under 20 grams of carbs a day. Try to do the cheat meals. Track insulin, not calories. Let's now play a game. So the last thing, which is Dr. Boz ranks supplements. You mentioned supplements, which is BHB that you love, protein powder that you hate. So for the next few ones, you have to tell me, is it bullshit or really, really great? Do you think collagen is great for you or pretty overrated?
Overrated. It's first of all, it's pulverized. So that's in my audience of people, they're making way more insulin than they're ever getting into their into the fingernails or hair or whatever they're trying to do. And nutrient-dense food is going to be a better way to not raise your insulin while getting you that food. So do some bone broth, do some, put a hoof in your stew and have collagen that way.
Okay, the next one is interesting because many people do this. Multivitamins and AG1 powder. Is it the same thing? Powder drives insulin?
Yeah, so I push people away from the powdered stuff if they're super healthy. Like you get people like Joe Rogan saying, I do AG1, or people like Huberman, I do AG1, and they put powdered vegetables in them. That's not my patients. They're not, they are, exercise, muscle building men. And I take care of people with insulin resistance. So stay away from that. I promise you can live without them. The multivitamin, there's several studies that say, it can be better, but do I see that you need that when you are eating well? So there is this transition where I say, if you have it at home and you're taking a multivitamin, you can continue to do that. But what my goal is to get you healthy enough that you absorb the nutrients that you need from the food you eat. And there's a learning curve for that. I don't take a multivitamin and I don't do AG1. I do not do that.
Okay, I don't do either. Okay, next one I've taken, but I stopped taking it. Creatine. You love creatine.
Yeah. So creatine has some awesome studies that get your, it is a source for improving cognition. That is probably the biggest headline that we've been over the last couple of years. Getting up to that 10 milligrams, even 15 milligrams, 20 milligrams a day after a jet lag, and watch how well that cognitive shift of adjusting to the new time zone, really great studies on that. And I do see people with the deficits in their brain that supplementing creatine helps. What I caution people about is when they do like what I do or did, and that is down the creatine so much that you end up on the toilet in the next hour, meaning you just pooped it out. You have to steadily deliver that so that you do not flush it out the backside. I'm great at give me a job to do in the morning, check it off the list, and don't think of it again. So there are some other supplements coming out with the improved ability to absorb 20 grams of creatine, and I'm looking forward to see how well those work, because I have a lot of patients that complain of that, and indeed, so you have to sip on it, and it ruins my coffee. I've tried to do it in my coffee. I've tried to do it in the other. I'm like, I'm just going to take a shot of it and then deal with the consequences, but I'm not getting it into my brain as what. So I stopped doing it as regularly. So I'm waiting for these other products to see if I can stop the diarrhea.
But it's still a worthwhile tick product that Dr. Boz would recommend. Yep. Okay. Iodine. What do you think?
Okay, so there are people who have an iodine deficiency, but that is rare. Okay, this is a nutrient that you have to survive. Okay, you cannot be a human without this. When I see people saying, I mean, I have seen some really iodine deficient people that, I mean, their skin had ulcers on it. Their allergic system was off the charts, in trouble. And it wasn't until the iodine was properly replaced that this fixed. They're really sick. The average person isn't walking around with an iodine deficiency. So there's a trick out there, and it is not a perfect way to diagnose this, but it is to put iodine. You know how you can get the iodine that they clean your skin with before surgery? You can put iodine on the bottom of your feet before you go to bed, and then put a sock on so that you do not stain your sheets, and do that 5 days in a row. So the first couple of nights you can get this kind of hot sensation because it's a new thing that if your cells haven't seen it, it can make you a little itchy in response. But look, if you put this on for 5 nights in a row and you're still getting that histamine response, that itchy, hot feeling on the bottom of your feet, you might be low on iodine. Now, there are people low on iodine that does not happen to, but that is a really great beginning way to look for that. The testing to look for iodine is really complicated. You have to get a urine test and then give a dose of it and then check the urine over the next couple of hours. And it's very expensive. It's very specific. I mean, when I was doing this deep dive with my family, I just had everybody go on iodine for a month and see how they felt. And it was shocking to me how a couple of the folks in my family, they did not feel good until a week into it, which is, again, another symptom that seems to be associated with the deficit of iodine. But iodine is easy to replace. It is in a lot of places. So the people who are low on it are usually pretty darn sick.
Got it. So iodine is, if you need it, take it. Maybe do a test to see if you need it. Vitamin C, Dr. Boz, if you're carnivore, can you get enough vitamin C?
Yes. So the key there is, if you're carnivore, and I'm going to say carnivore keto, meaning you've got a nice anti-inflammatory, you really do have cells that touch and talk to one another really well. Meaning vitamin C can get lost. You know how I say that people really lose a lot of water weight in that first week of keto? That vitamin C can hang out in the space that's not getting delivered to the end organ. When you are anti-inflamed, meaning you're living in a healthy, non-inflammatory state, it does not take a lot of vitamin C to do the job. So you do not need 15 oranges a week to get the dose there. I don't take vitamin C. Most of my patients don't take vitamin C. If they do, it's without my approval. You don't need as much of that as people pour down their throats for the appalling effect.
So it seems like taking some good quality supplements. So you like BHP salts, you like vitamin D3 as well, which we didn't speak about. Actually, so why does vitamin D3, why is that so important?
It is, again, a fat-soluble vitamin that so it's swept away in the high insulin state, meaning even if you put it in, just like if I put in testosterone or estrogen, estradiol, if you have high insulin, we put it in your fat cell, it doesn't get to the end organ. But that vitamin D is I'm going to put this in air quotes, cofactor for every single one of these cells, meaning it goes into the cell, it responds and signals the nucleus of that cell to produce proteins that are specific to the cell. Like the white blood cells produce one type of protein, the heart cells produce a different type of protein, the brain cells produce a different type of protein, all based on whether or not vitamin D was there to signal it. So it is a super powered signal within our bodies that is required to function better. However, high insulin states, because it's fat soluble, decrease the effect in our body. Supplementing with it, I've tried to, I live in Florida now, I shouldn't have to supplement. And every time I stop taking it, the amount of vitamin D that I can measure slips below what is recommended. So even I take that several times a week.
Okay, last question for you. If somebody has watched this now, they're like, Dr. Boz, I want to do everything that you're saying. I want to do sardines, butter trick, take my vitamin D and do some bone broth. What is your best advice for them right now?
Do not go ass over apricot, meaning everything at once, they turn into this, they tumble down and then they crash. Step one, why do you want to do this? Why do you want to do this? Meaning looking in your heart, and this is a thing I do at every single one of my classes. I share my why. Why do I do the ketogenic diet? I'm healthy. I don't need this anymore. When you look at my heart, what motivates me to do this and to teach people? And it has everything to do with the reason I started in the first place, which was my mother. So before I found that, I was ready to quit. you know what? My mom was killed by COVID on a ventilator in a hospital where I couldn't be there. I was heartbroken for the next couple of years and thought, why do this anymore? She's dead. And it wasn't until I was able to say, wow, look at all the people that get healthy by my teaching. And her story stays alive in every one of those people that got better. And it wasn't until I was able to find, why am I doing this? Because you're going to have to remember that why when somebody's offering you, a chocolate cake or, your favorite glass of wine or something. And you cannot find that message when temptation is high. You have to find in your soul, why are you doing this? And so I encourage people, the first step is to not go ass over apricot, truly have a conversation with you and God and say, why do I want to get healthy? What am I missing out when I'm not healthy? That's step one.
I had a tear that came to my eye when you said your mom, because my father passed away from FTD last year at 71. So everybody has a reason to do a ketogenic diet, and it's not the reason of I want to lose weight. It's something more. But Dr. Boz, your work is so pivotal and foundational to everyone. And the fact that you tell patient stories and the success of patients is what helps that person watching right now make the change. So I just want to say thank you so much for your time.
Well, I'm excited to meet you at Meatstock. Thanks for what you do, Rena.
I hope you enjoyed this episode. Check out this one with Candy Fraser, all about the #1 insulin trick to burn belly fat faster. I'll see you next week.